Hi, I'm Nora, and I have a lot of thoughts. Lately, about the border and the migrant caravan. President Trump originally said he was going to deploy about 5,000 active duty troops to the U.S. border to defend against the migrant caravan. Women and children, and yes, some men from Central America who are seeking asylum. Fun fact, seeking asylum is legal. Presenting yourself at the U.S.-Mexico border and asking for asylum in person is the actual established method for seeking asylum. That is how this works. At the height of the fervor, President Trump tweeted, "Our military is waiting for you." He gave the deployment order right before midterm elections, timing that a lot of people found really convenient, especially because it became a hallmark of his rallies.
As you know, I'm willing to send the military to defend our southern border if necessary, all caused because of the illegal immigration onslaught brought by the Democrats.
Instantly, critics lampooned the plan, officially called Operation Faithful Patriot. Former officials from both Democratic and Republican administrations, and many veterans, argued it was a political stunt just days away from a contentious election, designed to fire up the president's base. At the time, the caravan was still 900 miles and weeks away from the U.S. border. Still, about 5,900 U.S. military personnel headed to the border, thousands more than the number of people in the actual caravan, which was then numbering about 3,500. But it's not a political stunt, the Trump administration repeatedly said, insisting it's necessary for national security reasons.
Border security is part of national security.
I have a different question. Is this even legal? Can the president deploy active duty U.S. military troops within our own country for a law enforcement mission? Spoiler alert, maybe not, but it's a lot more complicated than a yes or no. Let's dig in. To start, there's already thousands of active duty military troops on the border, 2,000 National Guard troops, and about 16,000 Border Patrol agents who are the official law enforcement presence on the border. 16,000. Brief rabbit hole here. Customs and Border Protection wasn't always what we think of today. U.S. Border Patrol was actually created in part because of Prohibition, when liquor smuggling across the border became a big problem. Around the same time, the U.S. also capped immigration, which led to an early illegal immigration crisis. According to the CBP's official government website, both these events set the wheels of change into motion. And so Congress created the U.S. Border Patrol. So anyway, the CBP has been working on the border for a long time, and it's their entire mission. They're trained specifically for this. When I say it's not clear that the president has the authority to send active duty troops to the border to assist them, I mean, it's literally not clear. It all depends on what the troops are actually doing there. Why? It's time to talk about Posse Comitatus. If you've watched any cable news coverage of this issue, you've probably heard the term thrown around.
Posse Comitatus.
Posse Comitatus Act.
Posse Comitatus.
Posse Comitatus is important, so you better be obeying all those things.
But what actually is it? Let's do what AP US History students do when they have a question about how the government works. Turn to the West Wing.
Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 prohibits the military from civilian law enforcement.
Now, that's actually one of the best ways to explain it. The law prohibits the military from civilian law enforcement. Time for another rabbit hole. Posse Comitatus was passed in 1878 toward the end of Reconstruction. Union troops remained in the South after the Civil War was over, often intervening in local police matters. So with overwhelming support from the new Southern senators and congressmen, Congress passed a law to prevent federal military personnel from enforcing domestic policy within the U.S. Posse Comitatus is loosely translated from the Latin for the power of the country. It's a common law practice that dates back to 9th century England and the origin of a county sheriff's office. In that context, it says that a sheriff can conscript any able-bodied man over the age of 15 to help keep the peace, say in executing an arrest warrant. The practice migrated to the U.S. with the first colonists and became a civic duty, like jury duty. Men had to serve in the posse. It was also heavily relied upon in the early days of westward expansion, before there were reliable police forces there. That's why in most old westerns at some point the posse gets together. That's where the term posse actually comes from, before it meant girl gang.
The Flossy Posse.
Anyway, the Posse Comitatus Act is still in the books. The U.S. military can't get involved in domestic law enforcement, aka troops can't be conscripted into posse service. So that's the key. The troops can provide support to law enforcement, which in this case would include Border Patrol, but not actual law enforcement capabilities. So the question is whether the active duty military troops, not National Guardsmen, in President Trump's deployment would fall under Posse Comitatus restrictions. To guard against potential overstep, the DoD has implemented its own restrictions. The military can't do any of these things, which can be summarized as searching basically anything, seizing basically anything, arresting or stopping anyone for any reason, pursuing someone, investigating someone, or interrogating someone. That seems to square with the Pentagon's own current guidance on what troops can do on the border right now, which includes these administrative and support things. But again, not searches, not seizing, and not arrests for any crimes. Listen to Defense Secretary James Mattis choose his words carefully on the plane on his way to the border to visit his troops.
Our units are in a position to enable the Border Patrol's law enforcement operations. We determined that the mission was absolutely legal, and this was also reviewed by Department of Justice lawyers.
And here he is speaking to the troops themselves. He's there with Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen. Remember, Border Patrol is under DHS.
Back them up. What does that mean? It means that her people do all the work, but we're standing behind them as a confidence builder and that sort of thing.
Someone should tell the president that.
They want to throw rocks at our military fights back. We're going to consider it, and I told them, consider it a rifle.
The Posse Comitatus restrictions mean the military is not taking the lead on stopping the caravan. That is not what they're doing there. They do not have the jurisdiction for that. So that brings us back to President Trump's critics who say this is just a political maneuver. Why send active duty troops at all if there's already thousands of Border Patrol agents and National Guardsmen doing the actual work of law enforcement? Unless the troops are getting involved in law enforcement efforts in violation of Posse Comitatus. Now, there's no evidence of that, and I'm not saying that's happening, but the thing is, we would be in uncharted legal territory if that was happening. There have been no significant legal challenges about sending active duty military to the border because there's never been a need. Past presidents have never tested these boundaries. One thing is clear, this isn't over. The Pentagon just announced its intention to extend the mission through the holidays, into January. If the president continues to deploy active duty military personnel within the United States, these questions will continue to dog his administration, as well as the question about what they're even doing there in the first place. And that's probably more than you wanted to know.